SwitchGrocery curates delicious food products for people who have a specific lifestyle. We have Neha with us, who's the founder and CEO at SwitchGrocery. Thanks for joining in, Neha.
Hi, Naman. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. So I was reading a story, before this conversation to know more about how it all started in 2016. And I believe there were a series of events that led to you
Yes.
starting SwitchGrocery. So could you just walk us through them?
Yeah, sure. I'm laughing because it was I'm an accidental entrepreneur. So I think
Okay.
some people, are like, okay, that's what I'm gonna do. I know that I'm gonna start my own business. I actually am an accountant, and I
Mhm.
worked in accounting for 13 years.
Mhm.
And then I think that there were two things that happened for me, which, you read about it in books where, you always say that to be an entrepreneur, you have to solve a problem.
Right.
And that's what happened to me. So basically it was that I gained weight very easily. And I don't know, my friends always say that, Neha just breathes and she gains weight. And
Okay.
so that's what kind of happened my whole life.
Uh-huh.
And when you work long hours, which I was, I was gaining weight very slowly, and I didn't know what was happening. It was impacting my
Mhm.
health.
Mhm.
And that's when I decided I'm to get a trainer and actually learn about the body, learn about like how you gain weight, what happens.
Mhm.
And I think that there were two problems. I went through this whole journey where it was, learning how the body works, how you gain weight.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the second part of it was that there weren't that many food products that were available at the time. Like now you see keto and low carb on
Right.
CNN, but at the
Yeah.
time there were
Yeah.
not that many food products. And so I wanted to actually make a product. So those were
Okay.
kind of the things that happened. In making a product, I went to a course. I paid $20 for it, which taught me how to what it actually takes. And you've interviewed some food founders, so you
Yeah.
know what
Mhm.
it actually takes to make a food product. It's not like your kitchen, right? Like when you're just making
Yeah.
eggs for breakfast, you have to make sure it's shelf stable. You have to source all your ingredients. You have to get your packaging. And then we'll get into this in the business model, but then you need to get it to market. You need to get it on shelf.
Mhm.
And to get it on shelf, usually somebody else decides, not your customers.
Right.
And so that was the problem I saw when I went to that $20 course, which was why
Uh-huh.
does it take so long if I made a product
Mhm.
um, for it to get to market? And Naman, the course instructor, was very frank with me. She just said, "You're not a cook, you're not a home chef, you don't
Right.
enjoy cooking, and
Right.
you're not a food scientist.
Uh-huh.
So why are you here trying to make a product?"
Mhm.
And so that's when I went home and said, okay, maybe there are all these people who make products, and now I've learned that it's so difficult for them to get it out there.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of how Switch was started, which was, what if I could make a marketplace
Right.
for these suppliers to get their products out there?
Mhm.
And the other side of it was a health side, which was
Right.
that, people gain weight and they're blamed for it, and
Mhm.
it hurts, and in talking to doctors, in talking to people who work in the medical industry, I learned that really gaining weight is a result of Indian insulin. I was going to say Indian because this is like my whole family's like this,
Yeah.
but you have something called insulin resistance. So I learned about
Uh-huh.
insulin resistance. Anyone listening can Google it. I learned about how the food industry has made processed sugar added foods bioavailable. They're everywhere. They're in Tim Hortons, Starbucks.
Right.
Um, and really, I read a book by Dr. Jason Fung called The Obesity Code, which
Mhm.
which from what I learned from that book was that it's really not my fault that I gained weight, but
Mhm.
also that it is my responsibility to do something about it. And part of that for me is, following sort of as much as possible, a low carb, grain free
Mhm.
lifestyle, which has
Mhm.
really helped me get my health back. So that's
Okay.
sort of and then then I had to do the things, which was quitting my job, having everybody tell me, what the hell are you doing? You're an accountant. Why are you doing this? going through that. But
Mm-hmm.
here I am 4 years later, and the rest is history.
Okay. Pretty clear. Like I can visualize those series of events, that would have happened
Yeah.
when you started this. So you mentioned it's a marketplace model where you have to you procure goods from small and medium businesses, and then you have customers with a specific lifestyle and dietary requirements on the
Yeah.
other hand. So
Yeah.
on the procurement side, like how do you go about finding these small and medium sized manufacturers who are manufacturing these specific types of food products?
Um, can I just say no one has asked me this question before?
Okay.
So before when we started Naman, like everyone was like, who's SwitchGrocery? I
Right.
actually, made a PowerPoint and approached each supplier that I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
carry,
Mm-hmm.
especially in Canada, because I would go
Mm-hmm.
to US suppliers and say, I've learned all these rules. I will import your products. I will take responsibility. I'll pay you for your products and then I'll resell them.
Mm-hmm.
But now suppliers approach us. I talk with my hands a lot.
Okay.
Now suppliers approach us, and so we have to kind of think about what are the reasons. How do we select and be more selective about the products we carry? So everything we carry has to be, in general, this is all in general, low carb and grain free. And we don't do that. We don't go beyond that because, there are a lot of online retailers where your products can get lost, right? Like 50,000 SKUs. A SKU is an individual product and size, but, and so we don't want to build a store where products get lost. So you have to be low carb and grain free. You have to have an incredible, amazing taste. I mean, anytime you go to a wedding or anytime you go to a party, everyone's like, was the food good? And then everything else you forget,
Right.
And it's just like that. I've noticed that no matter, you can throw all the sustainable packaging at it, Naman. You can throw like, this is amazing, a sustainable wage for farmers. If it doesn't taste good, no one will buy your product. Like, period. So you have to have that first. And then you kind of put, okay, the sustainability piece to it. The third thing is we only do one per category. So for example, if we carry a baking mix, we'll try all the sugar-free baking mixes on the market. Well, that's the fun part of our job. Yeah. And then we pick one and we carry one so our customer is served. They're not confused about, they don't have to make the choice. We made the choice. The fourth piece, which is why I'm so excited about Epic, what you do is we pick brands that are doing something different. So, and I can't put them in a box. Some of them could be, they're focusing on sustainability. They're focusing on fair wages for farmers who are being squeezed in this pandemic. But there has to be something. And then it's called like the magic, I guess. Yeah. And then that's sort of how we pick the brands. And the other side of it is our business model is we then tell their stories. So we do very similar to what you're doing, but in a way to have a marketplace. And then so many of these suppliers don't have time to tell their own stories. And we do it for them or with them.
No, I can understand, like it's hard to, it's not really black and white when you are selecting these vendors, but you have a feeling that, okay, these guys are doing something good, we can bring them on board. So I get that part. Yeah. Thanks a lot for sharing that. And on the consumer side, you have this strong focus on building a community. You do events like wine tea Wednesdays on Instagram.
Yeah.
What is the reason behind building a community there?
Yeah. This is why I like the conversation we were having before this interview, because I think the main thing is, so first of all, I don't like the word community. Bree, who's on my team, we always have this argument because I say Switch family and she says community. And then we actually did a poll on Instagram to our we call them our customer friends, and said, which one would you pick? And it was 50-50. 50% people chose Switch family and 50% of the people chose Switch community. But the reason I say family is because at the end of the day, I think everyone wants and I'll give you an example. When you watch an Instagram story
Mm-hmm.
and someone says to you, hey, you guys, or
Mm-hmm.
my followers,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you don't feel good when someone
Mm-hmm.
calls you a follower, or when someone says you guys. I mean, I say you guys, but I think people want to be seen and heard and felt and acknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, you know, that's really what happened for me, because I want to be seen, felt, acknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
The community just built from that. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, I wrote thank you cards to the first 300 customers.
Oh,
And
okay.
like, Naman, I'm talking literally on this desk at night,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
dear this person, for your $20 order. And I wrote to them how to use the product to get the most out of it.
Yeah.
I didn't do that so they would come back to me. I did that genuinely because I was like, you took your hard-earned money and you spent it in my store. Like, it still blows my mind. And so that's sort of why I think the community was formed, because, you know, now there's no like small towns where you meet your neighbor, this is how we meet. And I think the role of social media is that to help people feel seen and to help people feel like, oh, I just became a mom. There's no one around me that's a mom. And there's this social media account that I follow who's feeling pain or hurt or happiness. And I feel like I can relate to this person. So it was a no-brainer for me. So our community is not just, some of our community, I would say, don't even buy from us. But people even emailed us and said, Neha, I'm really sorry I can't shop with you anymore. I lost my job. And I was like, you don't have to shop with us to get some knowledge or get, you know, anything from us. So people even came to our meetups. We used to have events and they didn't buy anything, but they came to learn and grow, I guess.
Okay. And on the sustainable side, like you're doing, you know, your part to make the planet a better place to live. Could you just like we'll get to know. So could you just like briefly walk us through that? Like what steps are you taking in that direction? Whatever is in your control to, you know, make the planet a better place to live.
Naman, we ship products in packages. So I think what's really hard for me is I'm an avid recycler at home. I do my best to, you know, reuse, reduce, recycle. And starting an e-commerce company, like nobody was going to call Amazon to me, a sustainable company, because they're adding a crap ton of packaging to this planet.
Right.
So there was a time, probably a year and a half in, because we started Switch and we packed our own boxes until last year when we went to a fulfillment center. And it hurt to pack boxes, because I was like, food is already coming in packaging and I'm just adding more freaking packaging on the food. So how am I making this planet better? And I remember I told my husband at the time, I said, I want to shut down Switch because I just feel like all I'm doing is contributing more waste to the planet. And he actually said something really interesting to me. He said, what are you going to do if you shut it down? You can't change an industry from the outside. You can only change it from the inside. Right. And that still has stuck in my head, because what we do now is, I kind of took it as a challenge. And what we do now is we make our box sizes smaller, like as small as possible. So Amazon will ship very large boxes. I hope nobody from Amazon's watching this video. But they don't have like the small box sizes. They're like, everything comes and then you take out a dish soap and it's big. Our goal is, we did some research, and the big thing is, if you're an e-commerce store, you can really reduce your carbon footprint by making your boxes smaller, by taking out all excess packaging. And so like, if I encourage now other companies to do this, we use only brown paper. Sometimes customers get mad at us because we have breaks on our food, but we've noticed that those breaks even happen with plastic. So sometimes we still use plastic, but primarily we use brown paper. We don't send any discount cards. We send like one little card, which is a letter, which I change every month.
Yeah.
And then everything, as much as our packaging can be post-consumer recycled, we do that.
Okay.
That's what we do on one side. The second, in terms of for the planet, is people, as I said, want delicious food, but the sustainability piece is important to them. So two of our suppliers. Oh my gosh, I have to send you some spices. I'll send you some spices. But two of our suppliers, one being Burlap and Barrel, they actually source. They've revolutionized the spice industry, whereas like spices, turmeric comes from part of India. It usually goes into a global distribution supply chain.
Okay.
3 big distributors take this turmeric, mix it with old turmeric, and then it gets bottled and then ends up on a shelf, maybe even 2 to 3 years later.
Okay.
And Burlap and Barrel is buying the spice directly from the farmers, bringing it to New York. It gets all bottled, and so we're one of their retailers. Origin Vanilla is another one, which is paying a fair wage to vanilla farmers, who've gotten a really shoddy deal for the last 20 years. So we really, really trying to choose our suppliers who have an impact and elevate them, because like a Loblaws will never carry their product. It's too high of a cost to Loblaws, because Loblaws is going to tell them, reduce your cost, make smaller spice jars, and they just can't do that, you know?
Yeah.
So those are the two ways, like making our boxes smaller, which I know sounds not as impactful, but it does work, and choosing our suppliers who have an impact.
Okay. No, it's commendable. Like whatever is in your control, you're doing that. And also, like, to your quoting your husband, like you can't really change an industry from outside. So that's a really important point.
Yeah.
And as we were talking before, like this journey hasn't been easy. Of course, like it's had its own set of challenges for you.
Yes.
I'm sure, like you still face challenges as a business on a day-to-day basis. But there would have been learnings as well out of it, which could be, learnings for the entrepreneurs that are just getting started now. So, what have been your like biggest challenges? I know there would have been a lot, but if you have to, point out a few big ones, which could also be a learning for entrepreneurs in the future, what would that be?
You ask such good questions. I'm just saying. So there were 2 things that I wanted, because you had said about what advice would I give someone else, and then what challenges I faced.
Right.
So I'll break it into 2 parts.
Sure.
One is what I wish I knew when I started. The first one is money. And you and I talked about this before the interview, which is the self-awareness and I wish at that point I had a little bit more self-awareness around money. So, like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you can reach your self-actualization, but first you need like food, clothing, shelter. You need your physiological needs and your safety needs, right? You need to know that you can make your rent. You need to know that, hey, if I want to go on a weekend trip to a cottage, I can afford it with my friends. So that's my biggest piece of advice to someone, which is really, if you're starting a business, step back and look at your money. How much money do you have in the bank? Especially the food industry, Naman, like you need money to buy inventory. There's this isn't a software startup where and if you can code, you just like code at night. That's not how it works. You need money to buy product. You need money to manufacture. Like, I think you interviewed Partake Brewing too, right? Like they needed money to just start. So, or do R&D. They must have done a lot of R&D. So that's kind of what we did do that, but I wish I had spent a little bit more time. I wasn't starting a business right out of my 20s. So I did have 13 years of work experience and savings, which brings me to my second point, which is how do you invest the money you do have, right? That's a big one, because we made a lot of mistakes. Like at that point, we ended up sponsoring a podcast. We didn't see a lot of results from it, and not because that podcast was awful. It's actually a great podcast. It's just our customers either weren't there or they didn't take the act of getting to know us and then buying, right? We found that our return has been much stronger on Facebook ads.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the first thing, which is if you can go all in, you should. I was able to do that because my husband has a full-time job. So that was a decision we made. But then we had to significantly reduce our expenses in order to be able to do that. And then the second piece of it was, when you do make these investments, is it, what are you going to invest in? And if you do invest in, maybe do a little bit of small tests. I ran away from Facebook ads, Naman, for 2-3 years. And that was a really, I don't want to say stupid decision. I don't like the word stupid, but in hindsight, why? Because I wanted this like pride of growing organically. But if your mission is to have more people know about you, more people see you, if you believe that strongly in your mission, then don't run away from ads. You can use $10, $20, $30 just to get an ad, even to just get people to follow you and like you. And then, so we made some mistakes from the podcast, for example. And then when you do make the mistake, just move on. So learn from it and move on. But that's sort of my advice for what I wish I knew.
Right. That's some solid advice out there.
Yeah. And I like how you've done Epic, because it's gone, you can make the choice to grow something slower as well, which I think that's something we did with Switch, which was now we're saying with after COVID, you know what? Too much growth is not great for us. We can't, like, with too much growth, we have to double the inventory we carry in a month. That's a lot of cash to tie up in inventory. So maybe, so it's almost this balance of, you know, I mean, with COVID, SwitchGrocery became the toilet paper. I have this analogy. You know, we were just watching our site, Naman, and like people just descended and were clearing us out. And so then what do we do about our cash flow? Because now we got to go buy more inventory to service this higher level of sales. And if we do it too fast, you can crash, as you know, you can crash and burn, you know? So that was very, now with all those mistakes, what I have learned for myself personally is slower, steady growth for us has been key to grow. And your second question was about challenges. And it was, I would say the biggest challenge for me, and I'm trying to think of this because I think if my son watches this one day, you know, it was the pregnancy. You know, I think before I got pregnant, I kept thinking that men and women are equal in all respects. So, you know, I come from a family with my brother where we grew up with very same expectations. You know, there's expectations of us to be ambitious, to make something of ourselves. And then sort of when I got pregnant, I realized, well, my husband can't make the baby. So, you know, I have to grow and carry this baby. And I can't, I'm trying to think of how to explain what I went through, but it was, I honestly didn't know, Naman. Like, I don't know how to explain, like, this, there's so many hormones running through your body. You get more fearful, you get tired more easily. You're making a baby, you know. We had to make a decision on my husband taking paternity leave. And in, you know, in Canada, he works for an accounting firm. He was concerned with how, I don't want to speak for him, but there was definitely, he's talked about this on a post on LinkedIn, where there was concern of how would his colleagues assess, like look at him if he says, I need a 10-month paternity leave, you know, 9-month paternity leave. And then how would we do that financially? Because there's no employment insurance for me. I have to keep working. So there were just all of these things. And that's when we made probably the biggest mistake we've made in the business, which was made out of fear, which was we launched in the US, which we just shut it down after COVID started because the sales tanked in the US, and the US doesn't have social safety nets like Canada. And so, you know, I think that's, if there's something that I could say about if I could have gone back, I underestimated pregnancy. I underestimated birth. I underestimated postpartum, that, you know, as a mom, I felt this biological need to want to be with my baby.
Right.
I had a C-section, which was very difficult for me. And like, Naman, I was on my laptop 18 hours after giving birth.
Yeah.
It's just, so the experience of being an
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur and not being able to take a break,
Mm-hmm.
and also family dynamics, people visiting all the time, friends want to come see you, but you don't
Yeah.
have a lot of energy. You're
Right.
barely walking, breastfeeding, all of these things. So
Mm-hmm.
I think in retrospect, if I were to do it again, I would
Mm-hmm.
have had more probably like friends around me who understood what I was going through, had brought me some meals, which did happen, organized like not myself. I don't want to take that blame on, but
Mm-hmm.
and part of it is I just wish that society had more support for parents.
Uh-huh.
My husband felt alone because he was going through a paternal leave with not a lot
Mm-hmm.
of friends who've gone through that. There's
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of daddy and me classes, right? There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
mommy and me classes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I felt a little bit alone because
Mm-hmm.
while my friends are on maternity leave, they have
Mm-hmm.
a completely different set of issues. They can't get a
Yeah.
break. uh, I didn't have those issues, but then I had this, I don't get time with my son,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
that's sort of, I don't know if this is helping, but that's sort of the challenge I went through.
Oh yeah.
I still think it affects me today, Naman. Like
Mm-hmm.
try very hard to spend time with my son because I feel like I missed a lot
Mm-hmm.
of those early moments, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
also accepting it and hoping that one day he's proud and says,
Right.
look, like one day maybe he can say,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take paternity leave, dad. And it's not, nobody
Yeah.
raises an eyebrow,
Right.
or my
No.
mom worked and nobody raises an eyebrow. So
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
long
No, those
answer,
are.
but I
Yeah.
really wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, no, it completely makes sense. And thanks for sharing that story. Like, yeah, I mean, not all the founders are comfortable with it, but I think somewhere, everyone is going through, their personal journeys like that. So
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing that. And Mia, quickly, just
Yeah.
to understand, I just want to understand what lies ahead for you guys. Like,
Yeah.
yes.
You know what? I don't have a big bang answer for you, but I would
Mm,
say slow and steady growth.
mm,
I would say continuing to do better and right by our customers.
right.
Um, Finding suppliers is hard during COVID.
Yeah.
So if a food company is watching this and you have an awesome product, contact me.
Okay.
And we are going to stay focused on Canada. Like,
Okay.
made that decision, which
Yeah.
is, our goal is to stay small, stay nimble, and
Mm,
stay focused. I don't want to say stay small, but really stay focused
mm,
on what we do, find incredible small suppliers, bring them to our customer friends, add as much value as we can to our customer friends, and almost like do what we do, but do it better, if that makes
mm.
sense.
Perfect. No, that does. Well, thanks a lot, Neha. Like,
Thank you.
I think you've packed a lot of information for everyone to,
Yeah.
absorb, but it's important. Like, it's key to anyone who plans to start a business or is running a food business or, uh, want to know more about how it all happens in a food business. And
Thank
kudos to
you.
you on that, building a business while maintaining those personal relationships as
Yeah. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to reflect and
well.
talk about it. And you're doing something really important.